As war continues on within the Metro network within Moscow, the Reds, the Reich, as well as other smaller factions use everything they can to wipe each other out and gain the stations and train links for themselves. At the same time, communities living within the Metro lines continue to struggle for resources, living off bare minimum rations of food, mainly consisting of mushrooms and pigs. But on top of that, their mutant presence is getting worse. Daily raids continue to wipe out stations and kill the defenders of these safe zones, and with the new presence of a terrifying beast known as the Dark Ones, the civilians are scared to even sleep at night. But with all these factions fighting it out, the Metro needs a force that is strong enough to not only deal with bandits or rogue soldiers looking to kill and steal from communities, but a faction that can also handle crucial tasks within the Metro and on the surface, and protect everyone from the increasing mutant presence. This faction would be seen as the best of the best within the Metro, a very small group of some of the fiercest soldiers with the best gear and heroic mindsets, willing to do anything to make a difference. This faction is known as the Rangers of Sparta Order, an elite group of battle-hardened soldiers who roam the wasteland and the Metros, doing the impossible to keep the Metros safe from harm. But who are the Spartan Rangers? Where did they originate from? What makes them unique, and what happens to them during the games and the books? Well, in this video we will explore all there is to the Spartan Rangers and try and cover all the elements within the books and the games. However, with that said, please make a note that the games and books counter each other sometimes, so I may miss bits out, but only because I want to make it coherent and not jump back and forth all the time. But with that said, today we look at Metro's elite defenders, known as the Spartan Rangers. As mentioned multiple times, the Great War of 2013 was devastating for the people of Moscow, as the nukes hit them hard and fast, only giving the people and soldiers a certain amount of time to rescue civilians and keep them safe within the metros below. Government focused everything on getting the metros set up so they could continue to live and wait for the radiation to settle so they could finally rebuild. Sadly, because of the population within these cities and the size of the stations below, only a fraction of the people could be saved, and soldiers had to make the hard decision of letting a lot of them face the nukes and die just outside the stations. But one thing that is known is society didn't completely reset. Within the metros themselves, a lot of the factions and organisations set up down below were actually just continuations from the pre-war days. The Reich, for example, were just members of an alt-right party who were small in numbers but dangerous and armed. The people at the top of the metro within the Metro Command Centre were said to be government officials, important scientists and military generals. Life whilst now underground was relatively the same, as the ones in power pre-war still continue to control everyone. The reason I talk about this is because it is not fully known where exactly the Rangers came from. Their origins aren't written down, and many do not question where they came from. However, it is known that Miller, or also known as Melnik, is their leader and set them up to be a true force of nature that they are down in the metros. Looking at his background, Miller was a former GRU Special Forces colonel before the war. With that knowledge, it is pretty safe to say that the Rangers are most likely remnants of those special forces and continue to live and carry out the duties that they held before the war even began. It is said that most of the soldiers consisting within the ranks of the Rangers would have been from Spetsnaz, simply because they had to be the best of the best with clear survival instincts as well as incredible combat skills. Any old soldier who wanted to join the Rangers had to have something about them that made them stand out. If they were average or just seen as good, they would not get in. These soldiers had to be the best and only the best. In the centre of the city underground lay the main stations, collectively known as Polis. These stations would be seen as the heart of the metro, as they contained all of the wealth and power, which was probably helped thanks to the main stations being located near the Kremlin, General Staff of the Armed Forces building, and the Moscow State Library, meaning some of the top minds of the pre-war were situated here. This area, because of its power and influence, would be the main base for the Rangers, and because because they were the strongest force within the Metro, would be Polis's main protectors, the guards of Polis. However, this did not mean that this was their one and only role. It just meant that if Polis was under attack, the Spartans would be expected to answer the call. Apart from that, the Rangers were completely independent and could go off on their own missions that they deemed important. Whilst the Rangers are seen as the protectors of Polis, their numbers are much lower than you'd imagine. Being the best of the best, they have to make sure that quality comes above quantity. Because of this, it is believed that the Rangers have around 100 combat-ready members. When compared to other bigger forces such as the Reich or even the bigger army within the Red Line, the Rangers are a tiny faction, and if they went to battle against the Red Line, there would be one Ranger to around 70 Red soldiers. With that said, the Rangers are absolutely feared by anyone they come into contact with. Bandits are said to flee when they come into contact with a Ranger, even if it is just one on his own. Stories go around bandit camps about how deadly the Rangers really are, with one story saying that a lone Ranger single-handedly took out large groups of men. Nothing was able to hit him, and despite the overwhelming force, nothing could take this man out. The Rangers were almost unkillable, and because of that, the Reds, the Nazis, as well as every other faction was fearful of this Ranger order. In fact, the Reich was so fearful of the Rangers that it is said they just try and stay away from anything related to them and would not deal with their affairs. But regardless of their small size, the Rangers are easily the best equipped group of soldiers within the Metro, with technology so far advanced compared to everyone else, including the Reich, who were also incredibly well armed and geared up, especially by 2034. This was mainly thanks to their pre-war training once again, meaning they knew how to maintain their equipment to the best standard, as well as improvise with customizing pieces of equipment, making on-the-go weapons and throwables. Due to their influence as a faction, they are also able to access the best gunsmiths within the Metro, allowing them to get the best guns on offer, such as the Kalesh, which was far better than the Bastard equipped by a lot of the other lesser soldiers of the Metro. This also included some of the finest, most protective gear, consisting of a heavy Sherpa-lined jacket, combat trousers and boots, with a heavy chest piece, spaulders, and the iconic Ranger helmet. However, it is noted that the Rangers do not possess any proper camouflage clothing for venturing out over the surface. Instead, it is said that in the early years in 2033, they instead wear faded woodland camo, something that stood out so much when on the frozen surface. Then when the snow started to melt, it was shown that the Rangers started to wear urban camo, once again making them stand out in the lush green swamps. However, it is said that this was not a problem for the Rangers, as most of the monsters that hunt the surface are said to hunt through non-visual means, meaning camouflage is pretty useless on the surface, and radiation suits would be far more important for their overall survival. Not only did they have access to the best gunsmiths and armor, they were also one of the only factions that were able to maintain and run vehicles on the rails as well as on the surface, driving heavily armored and armed trucks that would be able to cut through any obstacle in their way using either the plow on the front or their DSHK 12.7mm machine gun mounted on the back. With all this gear, power and influence throughout the Metro, it is clear that the Rangers were a very appealing faction to get involved in. However, as mentioned before, they were extremely closed off because of their recruitment role. It was rumoured that a few regular soldiers would be recruited to help with the Rangers and their tasks. However, they had to really prove themselves during this to be allowed in with a shot of being a permanent member of the Spartan Rangers. With that said, however, there were occasionally a few members who disliked being a part of the faction and wanted to leave. However, although this was never fully explored, if a member was to abandon or worse betray the order, they would be dealt an extremely harsh punishment. And whilst no one as of yet has said what this punishment is, rumours are the punishment is considered to be worse than death. However, most members are proud to be a part of this heroic faction that are feared by all of the other ones. With their motto, "If not us, then who?" the Rangers would see themselves as the only ones who could solve the problems within the Metro. Hunter, a proud member of the Rangers, would call them leukocytes, meaning white blood cells, stating that they were the ones circling the veins of the Metro line, healing the wounds caused by the mutants and the other factions, causing havoc to the civilians. But as the faction continued to guard and protect Polis, something new would emerge, forcing the Rangers to take new matters into their own hands and open up their recruitment to new members. More specifically, the young adopted boy living within the VDNKH station, that being the boy known as Arytom. Arytom had a horrible childhood. At the age of 4, he was one of the lucky ones to get down to the metro before the bombs fell, and began living in the new underground society. However, before real maturity, Arytom then went on to lose his mother, his only birth parent, in a horrific incident which saw her get killed and mutilated by rats, to the point where the man who found her could not identify her face. This led to Arytom having a crippling fear of rats and also being homeless, as he was one of the only ones to survive this incident, as his mother handed him over to the soldiers looking to escape, moments before her own demise. Raised then by his stepfather, Sukhoi, or as Arytom describes him, his uncle, Arytom would constantly remember his mother and be haunted by his own memories and recollection of that event. Now at the age of 26, Arytom lived within the VDNKH station, being a part of his uncle's forces, as Sukhoi now took charge of the station. However, things were to change as the ranger known as Hunter approached the station to bring supplies. Arytom was always well respected by all of the soldiers within that part of the metro, the main reason being simply because of his past, but also because nothing seemed to be able to kill him. He almost seemed protected by another force, ever since he and his friends ventured to the botanical gardens. Hunter saw this and realised he was special and could get the job done. But at this time, rumours were spreading all over the metro. A new beast known as the Homo Novus, or the Dark Ones, was taking over stations and wiping out soldiers with its telepathic abilities. That was why Hunter had really come. Alerting Arytom himself, Hunter ventured off into the dark tunnel to warn the other rangers of this increase in Dark One's presence. They had to be the ones to save the day, because as their motto stated, if not us, then who? Arytom was told if Hunter did not return that it was down to him to alert the Rangers. He was given this vital role and was one of the very rare people recruited by the Rangers to handle a significant task of vital importance. Hunter saw something in Arytom and knew if anyone could do it, it was him, with his unbelievable luck and otherworldly force that kept him out of harm's way. Because of this, Arytom was now the latest unofficial recruit for the Rangers and was tasked with heading to their main base within Polis. Throughout his journey, Arytom is always addressed as a ranger by the other soldiers on the surface and in the stations, with even Red Line soldiers and Reich soldiers believing him to be a full ranger member. Like with all the other rangers though, Arytom was a force to be reckoned with, being able to survive against incredible odds. There was nothing that could get in his way from completing his mission. He was truly a Spartan Ranger at heart, and maybe Hunter saw that from the get-go. The Rangers knew the Dark Ones needed to be taken out. It was their only option of keeping the metro safe. However, Khan, an affiliate with the Rangers, disagreed. He believed there was a way of handling the situation without violence. He believed they weren't evil and humanity needed to coexist with them. However, once Arytom arrived at Polis, speaking to Miller, the leader of the Rangers, it was clear that they needed to be stopped, and Khan's plan was not going to work. The council, however, did not agree and decided to not support the Rangers. They were on their own. Their only chance in saving the metro now was to find the rumoured bunker within the mythical Metro 2 known as D6. But the location was unknown. They needed to find out where it was, if it existed at all. Eventually, thanks to Arytom's incredible luck, they were able to find the maps to D6 and travel to it. A grand bunker filled with pre-war technology that was the best of the best, with guns and armor that could majorly benefit the Rangers in their quest to keep the metro safe from mutants and its own people. But the Dark Ones were priority, and thanks to the incredible arsenal D6 housed, the Rangers were able to climb the Ostankino Tower and destroy the new beings the Rangers hadn't tried to negotiate with. If they had, they would have realised they were peaceful, and in fact Arytom was their common ground, being the one they had protected and helped throughout all his life down within the metro. But now the Dark One's home was gone. The Rangers were successful and once again were deemed as heroes within the metro stations, especially Arytom, who was seen as a god who had come down from the heavens in a shiny chariot. Arytom, however, disagreed and hated the praise and saw himself as a murderer of innocence, wishing himself to be dead, have monsters eat him, or that he could hang himself from a tree. Wanting to tell the rest of the metro who the Dark Ones really were, it was no good, and the Rangers did not see eye to eye on this matter. The Rangers now were at an advantage, however. Finding D6 was the best thing to happen to them as a faction. They could now quickly travel around using the Metro 2 rail lines. They now had new improved armor with clear Sparta branding on it, as well as radiation protection, new improved vehicles, as well as weapons weapons. This place was perfect for their new base, and they immediately started setting up there with a mess hall, armory, and gyms to help with training. The rest of the Metro, however, was facing huge wars between the Red Line, the Hansas, and the Reich. However, the Rangers did not meddle in this affair until they were forced to. During this battle, a traitor of the Rangers, Lesnitsky, went behind their backs and attracted the Red Line to the secret bunker they had set up at. If the Red Line took this, they could rule the Metro and be the dominant force. They just needed to take out the Spartan Rangers, and with their numbers and this backdoor scheming, it was possible for them to succeed. Attacking the bunker, the Red Line wiped out half of the Rangers' forces. Around 56 soldiers lost their lives during this, and the Red Line had almost certain victory. But the Spartans would never give up. This was their job, and if they were to lose, what soldiers would they be then? They hit back and wiped out the remaining Red Line forces, who had sent in elites of their army. D6 was now secure, and the Red Line was ruined by the attack. It was clear the Rangers were far too powerful, and with Arytom in their ranks, luck was certainly on their side. As the forces went back to their home bases, the Spartans started to rebuild within their bunker, clearing up the mess caused by the battle. However, going forward, dark days would loom over the Spartans, as they had now got only half of their forces than before. They needed to rebuild their forces and gather their strength once again, but something else was going to affect them and split up the order completely. Tension was running high within the ranks of the Order. Not only was their morale low because of their overwhelming losses during the last battle, but the Colonel had now lost his daughter as she had decided to marry Arytom against his will. Miller disliked Arytom massively because of this, and also felt he was extremely reckless and did not think about anyone else apart from himself. By this point, both Arytom and Anna had left Polis and the bunker to live peacefully within Artyom's home of exhibition in the VDNKH part of the Metro. Their goal, or at least Anna's goal, was to set up a family life for them, to have a child and to raise it in a good environment away from war and endless bloodshed, pushing aside the Rangers once and for all. However, Arytom had different plans as he ventured off on his own. He was adamant that when he was up on the tower in 2033, taking out the Dark Ones, that he had heard a signal, something coming from outside of the city. Surely people were out there. Maybe other countries had survived, and there was a place to go where they could rebuild, repopulate, and live forever in peace in a new green land. However, Miller requested that Arytom meet with him and the rest of the Rangers. Maybe this was to talk about his relationship with Anna, or maybe it was more important work for the Rangers. Arriving there, it was clear that Miller was on a quest. He needed new troops for the Rangers for them to get back to full strength, and wanted to make sure all the remaining Rangers were vigilant on their day-to-day lives. Miller had now changed though. Wearing a big jacket, the Colonel now covered his scars, and in the words of Arytom, his right arm was amputated at the shoulder. He didn't want to get used to it, as if his arm might grow back if he was patient enough for a while. Using a wheelchair as well, he would not be able to fully walk until he was given a prosthetic leg that would help him put him back into service once again. He also seemed colder to Arytom than before. Whilst he was always distant from him, he now despised him for marrying his daughter, seeing him not as husband material at all. But Arytom didn't care. He needed to tell him of his plans for going forward with the Rangers. Telling the Colonel of the signal he had heard before, Miller immediately dismissed it, stating it was the effects of the Dark One from before, and that he was losing his mind. The Colonel, now despising Arytom because of his views on the Dark Ones, as well as the fact that he married his daughter, states his true feelings on him, claiming him to be irresponsible, insane, and that his daughter Anna should leave him immediately, as he is just a crackpot. With that said, Arytom decides to join back with the Order to defend Polis from the Reich, the Reds, and the Iron Legion, who was still on a takeover mission. Miller at first declines this because of everything that had happened, but welcomes Arytom back to the Order eventually, but without any praise. After this, the Colonel disappeared for a while as the Order, now with 108 troops, helped defend Polis from the Reich. However, en route, Arytom discovers something shocking about the new Order. With the Colonel not with them, Lechiaga went on to reveal that all of the new Order reinforcements that had joined their ranks were not from their own recruitment, but were in fact Hansa troops. Miller had in fact made a deal with the Hansa to train their special forces to make sure the Order was back to strength. This was a shock to Arytom, as the Hansa had not supported them at all in the battle for the bunker. Why would they want to help now, and why would the Colonel agree to this? Eventually, Letyaga responds to this question by saying the Colonel stated, where else was he supposed to find trained men? This was much better than scouring the distant stations. Arytom accepted this new order but still didn't fully trust it. But after the Reich had been fully defeated, Arytom realised he couldn't abandon his dream of finding Greenland out within the wider world, and finding that signal he had heard back in 2033. Venturing out onto the surface many times, Arytom couldn't hear anything, but continued in the hope that one day it would come through. His relationship with Anna got worse, and she became frustrated with these failed attempts, not believing his story about the signal at all. The same applied for Miller. However, one venture out into the restricted zone on a look for this signal, Anna ventured with Arytom and found a train travelling through the city. Everything they had been told by the Colonel and others about how there is only Metro was a lie. There were others out there, and there was a way to travel to them. As they ventured on, Hansa Rangers tried to stop them, but it was no good. Arytom's determination to find the truth was too powerful. They found the signal jammer. Arytom was correct. There was a signal out there somewhere, and someone was stopping them from hearing it. It turned out that the ones controlling everything were the original pre-war government, and all the factions, the Reds, the Reich, the Hansa, and even Colonel Miller's Spartan Rangers order were controlled by them. They told them what to do and enforced this closed-off world. It wasn't just Metro, there was more out there, and Arytom and Anna had to find it. Arytom and Anna were able to escape to the train known as the Aurora, to escape from the Metro, only to have Miller show up with just a handful of the Spartans. To all of their shock, Miller is then tasked with trying to pick a side. The world of the Metro, which is all he has known, which included his order still, or his daughter. Eventually, Miller decided to leave after fighting against the Hansa, the group he had just recently renegotiated with, and the few Spartan Rangers of the Order ventured off to find this land Arytom was so adamant finding. Relationships deteriorated between Miller and Arytom. However, after a life or death situation with Anna, they needed to work together to save her life. Venturing into Novosibirsk, the most radiated area within Russia, they needed to find not only medicine for Anna, but the rumoured map of the green area that others had spoken of. Finding both of these things, they were able to save Anna from certain death. However, Colonel Miller, the man who had founded these brave Spartans, who put their lives on the line multiple times for the good of the Metro and now humanity, had lost his life. He had done everything he could to keep his daughter safe, and in the end had grown to see Arytom as his own son and saw his own mistakes. The green land they were now travelling to would now be his resting place, and despite his changing character after the Battle of D6, he would forever be remembered as the Metro's colonel, loved by all of the members of the Spartan Ranger Order. But with these Spartans now finding new land to settle in, what is the future for the Rangers? Where do they go from here? Well, after the events of 2035, it's clear that Arytom will take over from the Colonel and lead his small group forward. But these aren't the only Rangers that exist. The ones back in the Metro are still there, and we'll see this group, including the Colonel, as betrayers. If they were to try and contact them, they could face something worse than death for being traitors. The rest of the Metro station as well would be looking for them, and no one will be welcome into their presence. They are stuck in this new land. However, for the Rangers to rebuild, they need more. They cannot simply live by themselves forever, even if they are extremely well trained in post-apocalyptic survival. They would need to do something to help them fully rebuild and be the next path for humanity. This is all theory now, but going forward with the knowledge of the pre-war government being behind all of the factions within the Metro and their control over the people, forcing them to believe that there is only Metro, the only thing Arytom and his Spartans can do is venture back to Moscow and try to uncover this huge conspiracy, alert the people that they have found this new land, and convince the other Spartan Rangers who they had left behind to join their ranks and defend the civilians as they venture back to this green land to finally rebuild. Exposing this hierarchy that's controlling everyone would also be the end of the Reds, the Reich, and the other factions that control the Metros. This could lead to no more war and finally peace amongst humanity. The Dark One Ones, when they left the city in 2034, also stated to Arytom that they will one day return to help humanity rebuild completely, but now is not the time. If Arytom, with his luck as well as the determination of the Spartans that he is with, can find a way back to the metros to convince the remaining order that they have an answer to all of their problems and expose the ones at the top, humanity and the Dark Ones can finally rebuild their life together as one and prosper in this new land. If they can't do that, then all there ever will be is Metro, and the people living there will be blind to any hope that could be on the horizon. For now though, the Spartan Rangers are split, half remaining within the Metro in Moscow defending Polis and keeping order, and the rest are out in new land hoping to rebuild. Their founder is now dead after supreme acts of bravery to save his daughter and help his son-in-law. It is now up to Arytom to keep them going, and what the future holds for these elite defenders, we will just have to wait and see. And that is the lore behind the Spartan Rangers. I hope it was enough for you guys. Sadly, that was as much as I could find on their organization, and I know a lot of the video was of the game, but hopefully I filled it out with some of the events of the book that you may not have known before. Either way, I do hope you enjoyed this look into the elite defenders of the Metro universe known as the Spartan Rangers, and if you did, why not give this video a like, leave a comment and subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like more lore videos like this, then make sure you check out my lore playlist in the description below, and why not support me on Twitter, Twitch and over on Discord to be a part of my amazing community. And if you really like this video, why not support me on Patreon or here on YouTube to get early access to my latest videos as well as ad-free ones. And speaking of supporters, I'd like to thank mine real quick. Big thanks to our Big Fish, Duquesne23, Rhino Head, Ryan Garnham and Sacrum, our Sharks, the AVP Man and Connor, and our huge Megalodons, Sinus, JJD896, Jacob Garcia and Wow Such Gaming. Also big thanks to our YouTube channel member, our Wise One Jambu, as well as all my subscribers over on Twitch. Thank you all so much once again for all your financial support. It makes making these videos possible, and it really does mean the world to me. So thank you so much. But that is all for now. Thank you all once again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.